Hey, ADHDers and allies. It's ADHD Girl here, bringing you another interesting episode of the ADHD and Me podcast. Today's episode is dedicated to all you amazing warrior parents out there who have fought so hard for your children's right to be seen, heard and educated in a broken SEN system. While the current Education Secretary has recently laid out plans for change within the SEN system, do these changes go far enough? Will they make the difference needed? Whatever the answer to those questions, change didn't come soon enough for my next guest, whose personal journey of fighting for her child's SEN needs caused her to be personally blamed and targeted. That is, until she said no more and brought legal action against the school. Not only did she win her child's case, but she's written 2 amazing books to raise awareness of both ADHD and PDA, and she's also co-launched a project which looks further into the parent blame culture when it comes to children with SEN. Let's hear more. I am here with Danielle and I'm very excited for this conversation. She's had to fight for her children's rights in terms of education and also holistically, as she has ADHD herself as well as autism. So it's really interesting to see how those two things interlink. So welcome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Danielle Yarter Hall. I am the writer of a blog called PDA Parenting. I've been writing for 8 years now. I've gone on to write 2 books. I'm also a disability campaigner. I'm a keynote speaker. And I'm also a parent of 3 children that are very complex. I'm also autistic and ADHD myself. And I have a bit of both backgrounds. I'm a parent, but I've also worked in schools for secondary and primary education, and run support groups for parents and stuff. I've also done a big project on parent blame with a fellow author. It's to my journey and what stuff.
So it sounds like we've got so much to talk about in just the 30-minute podcast. So I want to start off because I find it really interesting because obviously you say you're from a professional background that includes neurodivergent children anyway. Did that help you to realise that your own children were neurodivergent, or did you just knew straight away? Were there any kind of points for you where you felt, okay, these are not neurotypical children that I've got?
Yeah, I'd been going for that feeling for quite a long time. And this was mostly with my eldest, because I would say that she stood out at the beginning because her presentation was much more explosive. And it was almost like being on a roller coaster of going up and down like instantly and not being able to catch up. But yeah, I think there was always like this radar and I'd be continuously searching for information and I couldn't find anything. I'd be looking at things like anger issues or different kinds of
when they weren't interlinked,
and I could never find anything. And anything that I did mention, like to the school or anything, I'd say like about autism, and that was thrown out. Everyone laughed at me as if I was something really ridiculous. And then we had, in our own school, I was working one-to-one with a boy, and I was so drawn into him. And I attended some group training on autism. And when the speaker came out and explained how it actually could look very different and being neurodivergent could look completely different than you expected. And I'm sitting there listening and I'm thinking about him, but in my mind, it's almost like I'm having a little slow kind of clock ticking in my mind, thinking, that could be so. And so I went to speak to the trainer and I asked a really random question, and I remember asking, if my daughter goes and sees a baby's crying and she hits it over the head, be something that sounds a bit, could that be something? And so the person listened to me, the kind of concerns that I had, and she said I would definitely start.
So that was the first time you felt you were taken seriously?
At that point, not in my own life, that was only in work, but because at that point my daughter was 4 and she was excluded every day. And then on a reduced timetable, and then she hit crisis when she was 5. So at that point, I actually had to hand in my notice to my job because I physically couldn't work any longer. So my own job and my experience was never questioned. Like when I was going into school, I was still parent, and people assumed that it was my parenting skills that was making the reason. So nobody ever asked me. So I never really changed that. What was the turning point for us, I think, was they illegally excluded her permanently without the right details on her ear.
And it happens quite often, that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I upskilled myself, and I was like, they were laughing at home. Like my parents would go, oh my God, she thinks she's like Erin Brockovich. Sat there with piles of paper going through everything because I just threw myself into it because I just knew something wasn't right. My gut instinct. And the more I'm getting subject access requests and starting to build this picture of actually we were put in a situation where a child's misunderstood, the parents being blamed, illegal practices were happening. And no wonder we had a perfect storm for a situation to erupt. So I took it to the governors and asked them to reconsider. And they laughed at me actually in this meeting. I was just a parent. They thought I was just ridiculous. And I felt so belittled and without a voice.
So demoralizing, isn't it?
It was. And then I took it to an independent review panel, and it was like a tribunal if you've ever been to one. So we had a judge there, and they sat and they listened to all of my evidence that I'd prepared. And it was like quiet in the room. And basically the school was pulled to pieces. So were the governors. And they were told to reinstate her, basically.
So you really did have an Erin Brockovich moment.
Yeah. And I think around the area that I lived in, it was widespread amongst schools. This was the kind of example case of when you do things wrong, look what happens. And I think the professionals in the background, lots of them were quite secretly pleased that a parent had taken that school to that level to actually show what were the practices going on.
It opens the door for other people then, doesn't it, who are struggling?
Yeah. And for me, that's huge because my goal is always now to still try and prevent other children from being misunderstood, whether they're ADHD or autistic or whatever it's irrelevant to me. It's about the child's needs being met, and I'm very passionate about that. So
that's it. And you having ADHD and autism yourself, you've got a little bit of an idea of what they're going through because you've obviously been through that yourself. So how do you think that impacts your parenting on a day-to-day basis? And do you think that's possibly where you get your passion to fight for all this kind of injustice, really?
Yeah, the sense of injustice is huge. I've got a moral compass on my it just drives me, and it means that relationships can break down because I've got to follow. I'm quite rigid with my thought patterns of what's black and white, what's right and wrong. Yeah, so I think that ability to hyper focus and stuff has lent for me to do it. And I think in part of that question, I can identify with a child who's misunderstood. I was hugely misunderstood as a child. I did have some issues.
You masked maybe through it a bit, yeah.
I think probably, and also the fact I had a good foundation with a parent. I like to say I was born into privilege in a sense that I didn't have a bad background. I had an education. I had the ability to have my academic needs met. So I think that we can mask through in a way where we kind of just scrape through without getting as much as well. But that's not a fair system. That doesn't mean that it be fair for everyone. So I didn't particularly, when I see a child that's misunderstood, it's more that I'm drawn like a radar into them, their thinking and their communication style. And I have that empathy that just... My empathy levels are so extreme that it makes me feel like I actually feel someone else's pain as if it's my own.
I think that's very common with the ADHD side. A lot of people don't get this about ADHD. We are actually very empathic people because we can see it from so many different perspectives that we almost see it from the other person's perspective and then feel what they're feeling.
Oh, it's
very soul destroying, isn't it?
And people won't understand that.
People with ADHD can get triggered, and autism as well can get triggered by people who also are going through similar things, especially when it comes to parenting. Because if you're parenting a child who's got some of the same difficulties as you, as adults, sometimes we've learned the ability to overcome those difficulties. And then we've got someone there constantly reminding us that actually these difficulties they're having that we've had, but we're still having to deal with them. So it's almost like a cycle. Do you find that within your daily parenting as well?
Massively. I had to completely unlearn and rewire myself, really, because also like one of our go-to ways of managing sort of ADHD or PDA, etc., whatever, is to go down a traditional parenting route where we follow, and we're actually using very neurotypical kind of strategies. They don't always work. And they're ingrained in us from generation after generation because there's expectations from society of what we think.
There's always like one glove fits all thing, isn't it?
a child should be sat still, not moving. Actually, a child could learn much better if they're moving freely. So they're examples, aren't they, of how. So I think that we become stuck in what we're in our own sort of cycles, and then also our own neurodivergent presentations. We've kind of mine always work the best way. So we have to learn to unpick, and unless you're willing to do that work on yourself, you can't for your children. So you have to really dig deep and actually.
Exactly. If we have routine and structure and we thrive with that, sometimes like when our children throw us out of that, it can be very difficult because it's impacting on our neurodivergent selves as well.
And I think if we can actually see ourselves in a new light and actually are prepared to do that work, you will create far more nurturing relationships with your children.
Yeah.
And it helps everyone. And also the fact that sometimes you can say, what's helped me, because I recently got my diagnosis this year.
Wow.
I can say to my children, that my needs might need to be important too. We all get triggered. So actually I take accountability for myself, my actions. Like if I've completely gone into overwhelm and I've had my own meltdown, I take accountability for that afterwards.
Yes. It's important, isn't it? They see us as human beings.
That's impacted us, I think, because then there's almost sometimes children then start reciprocating what I'm showing them. So they'll, oh, what can I do? And then sometimes I might even get like a piece of wet cloth put on my head or something, or whether they feel like, oh, would you like a massage? I'm like, cool, what could we do? Put some water. Like they will shut the door. Do you want the noise down? And they'll do the things that I've tried to do for them. It becomes a cycle. But the fact that we can keep saying to them, this is.
Do you feel under more scrutiny, as not from anybody particularly on the outside, but from yourself? I have a friend whose children mask quite a lot. And one of the ways they do that, which is a way that a lot of people mask, is they copy what people are doing around them. That's how they know what they're supposed to do, which is very common. But unfortunately, my friend is a single parent. So her children are constantly copying what she's doing all the time. And that she gets very emotionally exhausted by it, because it can be, can't it? Very emotionally exhausted when you have additional needs. My friend doesn't have additional needs, but when you have children with additional needs and also have additional needs yourself, the emotional overwhelm is huge.
Yeah. Oh, it's massive, isn't it? And it's a real clash. It's really difficult. And I think what you've touched upon there about your friend as well, if she's single, it makes things an added layer, because we don't have somebody to bounce off or to partner our emotions. And I think we're trying to meet the needs of everyone and ourselves. And I think that's such a taxing place to be. But there is a problem about that, is that sometimes you're not in conflict with anybody else or anybody else's or wishes. And it becomes quite same and there's a differency to that pattern that does actually, it can benefit us. Yeah. Equally, there are elements that we might need that second partner that could actually, it's being a tag team of it. That's an ideal situation, isn't it? If you were in a tag team. Because then the person who's dealing with the meltdown or the person who's distressed, and that's what I always think, it's better then, like my parents come round because they're carers now, so they come and help me do that. And the moment they come in to try and intervene, it always gets worse. Whereas if they step back, allow me, one of us to do it, whoever's regulated at that point, because we do take turns, because we've been triggered, even them. If one of them is with the child and then the adults come away, but then there are support, if you know what I mean, they're the adult support to almost feel, okay, I'm here to ground you afterwards and feel better again. But that's an ideal world, isn't it? We all
It is.
Another adult in the background.
Yeah. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning, but I know you stated that at one point you had child protection services involved. And actually, this is very common for parents of children with special educational needs, because like you were saying, there's a blame thing, isn't there? Oh, your child is behaving inappropriately or not in a neurotypical way, so it must be the parents' fault. And that helps no one, does it? What did it feel like to go through that experience? It must have been incredibly hard knowing that you were doing your very best for your children and still being put through that.
It was horrendous. It's like a trauma that you can't even begin to imagine. You're living in this nightmare of every day. I didn't actually get to the point where they were involved or that I actually knew, because information was being held from me anyway. So I don't know how far they got involved. It was threatened to me. And at that point, I raised funds of £1,000 to actually get a SEN legal advisor in to help me fight back what their accusations were, and to actually prove what they were saying was completely incorrect. And at that point, they then conceded and allowed us to actually have assessments, and then all of the children, all their complex needs, basically.
So basically they threatened you and you were like, actually, no, I'm not having this. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So I'd been asking for support for a long time, but we'd gone for a long period at the time. So I was being threatened with it for quite a long time. So I had to shut down my blog. Every single piece of information was being monitored. It was just horrendous. Like, basically, I was being labeled different things. It was just awful. And I remember feeling like I was looking over my shoulder all the time, feeling like I just wanted to run away with my children to escape, because I was in a position where they were making me force the younger children into school. Both of them weren't getting their needs met. They were absolutely in burnout. They'd completely it was just a horrendous position. And then all they would do is write observations of what was happening on the playground and how I would be dealing with it. Or if I'd be sitting down on the curb trying to talk to them really calmly, trying to help them in, and they'd be like, oh, mum's not coping. She sat on the pavement. She did. So whatever I did, it would be a reason. And what they started doing was trying to find information to prove their hypothesis that I could be a fabricator of induced illness, which is
like an actual active campaign against you almost.
Yeah, it was. So I don't know if you've heard of FII, F-I-I. So it's a label that gets put onto parents, and it's really overused, and it's a huge connection where they're trying to do it a lot for neurodivergent parents and situations. But so it's like basically saying that we're fabricating or inducing, that we're
So basically putting the blame on the same parents, basically.
Yeah, but this is emotional. There's a safeguarding issue with this because it comes under emotional abuse of your children. If you're accused with FII, anything they can find as a red flag then gets investigated, but everything becomes a flag because our communication style, we're neurodivergent, that becomes a flag if we're direct. So it becomes like a great big minefield that you can't get yourself out of. So in my own work, when I'm doing the parent blame stuff with, we interviewed over 1,000 people, and we found we had good findings out of that, but hugely was that a lot of children were taken off of their parents unnecessarily because there was a lack of understanding, and key things was happening, like family profiling was happening. So particularly I was prime, like a prime subject, really. I'm neurodivergent. Yeah. Like there's lots
you've got the full works.
Yeah. So instantly, I have no credibility. So there's an assumption that I don't have any professional background. Yeah. It's just, so a lot of parents do actually get to the point where their children are taken away.
Wow.
When I say I was looking back, at that time, I was just continuously searching out, thinking, I'd lay awake at night thinking, are they following me? What am I going to do? What's my next move? I'd get a message saying, or even in conversations, they'd say, oh, who looked after your children when you went here? And I hadn't told anyone where that place. I'd just...
And so also your ADHD memory, it might not have been something you thought to remember at the time, because why would you need to remember it? Because you're not going to leave your children on the own.
And it was fine that they were actually listening. They were going through my own personal social media. I'd been to visit a friend. It'd be like, oh, so you went out that time. Who looked after the children at that point? There would be. And it got far more complex than that. But I just remember feeling like I'm thrown in this situation of a living nightmare. Like, how do I get out of this? Do I run away? And I had nowhere to go. And I just felt like I was...
Well, I don't think people can understand the level of toxicity that comes with being personally targeted like that till they've gone through it, because how it affects your mindset and your whole life, basically, is massive.
But it's like a witch hunt as well. What they do is they start targeting other professionals and they try and find out any information. Then they want contact with certain people. The children's dad, they wanted contact with him. And he'd removed himself from the situation a long time ago. He didn't. And so they were persevering, trying to find any way they could to try and get him to make any comment about what my parenting skills were like. And even Though in my own like professional side, I was speaking out, I was doing lots of
You're
work.
trying to be as professional as possible, and they're basically personally targeting you.
It's scary. And I've had letters of apology from the county since to say accountability, that what we've done was wrong. But I've repeatedly faced it again and again. So I've only just freed myself from another claim last year when the health services started that one again. So this is where I try and spread awareness, because actually, if you understand families and see what neurodivergent presentations can look like, you might be able to start from a place of understanding when you meet this family, not some judgment, because you're always on the back gambling. There, aren't you?
And speaking of awareness, I want to move on to talking about your 2 books, because they sound amazing. So you said you've done one for children, am I right? One for children and one for adults. So can we just talk about them a little briefly? Because they sound, even the titles sound quite interesting.
So the first book, the children's book, is called I'm Not Upside Down, I'm Downside Up. Not a boring book about PDA.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's co-authored as well. It's based on my daughter, probably, and my eldest daughter. And it was like a range of experiences seen through the eyes of a child. So for context, my daughter is actually PDA and ADHD, but it's more about trying to bring you into her world to understand what life feel like someone with PDA. So what those demands like, and sensory, and all those kind of different things. Yeah, so that's what that one's about. And the book that I released this year was actually for adults, and it's called Black Rainbow.
Wow. Again, an interesting title.
And it's about a lady called Sarah who's married, who has 2 children. She's on maternity leave, but has a good job. On the surface, they're a perfect family. Everything should be okay, but it's not. She's in a situation where she's feeling very misunderstood and not being heard. She's got a child who is quite colourful and interesting and different. And she's being blamed from everybody, from just every relationship around her. And she has a chance meeting with a stranger in a park, and it changes her perspective. And she starts to see if she can find her voice again.
Wow. It sounds so, I want to read it. It sounds really good. And it almost sounds a little bit self-biographical. You based it a lot on your experience.
Yeah, I would say it's inspired by it, definitely. Definitely from my observations of what it's been like in school, different places.
And it sounds so relatable for a lot of parents who are dealing and going through that every single day.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think what it's about really is about a parent who's going through a broken system, whether that's society, whether it's school, however that kind of looks. Yeah, and it's about trying to rediscover yourself. So she has 2 best friends, and they get up to a lot of mischief as well. So there's lots of different aspects in it that come together. But the fact is, what I've tried to do with it is create a bit of a tool that actually empowers other people. But because it's so fictional, you don't see. So you see little bits of the tools. It's like she goes on a curve where you're learning all of the tools, but you're doing it in a fictional way. So that's what I needed to know. So it's almost, if I could sell it to you, I'd say it's like a book that I would have needed at the very beginning of my journey, when rather than going backwards and almost trying to chase and find that information, it's almost like this could have things gone better if we had those right tools.
Exactly. They both sound like amazing books. And where can people go to if they want to purchase them?
Easiest place is Amazon.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like a bit of Amazon sometimes.
And there are links if people don't like Amazon, like on my website and stuff.
So what's your website then?
It's www.pdaparenting.com. But I also do post quite a lot on social media. So Facebook and Instagram and different places. I generally have a little hub of community on there that we post and share. And there's a lot of like-minded parents on there. So if I post something, quite often I don't always get the capacity to be able to respond. So I find that it mans itself. We have a really good bunch of parents that kind of all support each other. It's really nice. So
that's good. I'm sure hopefully some of our listeners will check it out. And just in closing, one of the things in our email correspondence that really stuck out for me is you were saying, I mean, I read it like on the bio of your book that you said society isn't necessarily well equipped to deal with families that fall outside the neurotypical, which I completely agree with, by the way. And I'm just wondering, what do you think we need to do in society to move forward? How do we make people aware? How do we make them understand what it is to be neurodivergent?
I think we need personal stories. I think they're key, really, because you've got to see it from the inside first, really, haven't you? So like these, having a podcast like what you're doing, these are little bits of information that are getting out, and the more personal stories we have. And I think, personally, I really think that we need to see more representation on screen or stories. So if in books, it's great, but that would be my ideal, really, with my adult novel, is that I'd actually really like to get it adapted to screen, because I really want to show, the more families we show of what that's like to be, and a divergent version of this, because everyone's going to have different experiences. We need to see more. And it's not, sometimes we see things where it's written about us, but not by us. I think that's key. I think we need to have more autistic and ADHD representation in the stuff that we're doing. We don't have somebody playing us who can't understand that experience first. That's where I feel like things are going to change. And I think things like training and information that goes out, like webinars and school training and stuff, I think we just need so much more information sharing. Like training wise, at the moment, teachers do one day, don't they? SEND training. It's not a qualification. That just doesn't touch the surface. You need to have real life experience of what it's like to be within SEND families or in a SEND school or something, to actually really adjust your mindset and gather new tools. I would personally love to be so involved in like the education side and the education stuff, because actually, if we can change the school system and how we invest in our learners and stuff early on, I think we could see a big difference, but it's got to come through education.
Yeah, I completely 100% agree. And I also agree with the fact that we should have more representation on screen for so many more different people. We're getting there slowly, but I think there needs to be more progression at a much faster pace for that acceptance. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I think it's amazing. And I think what you're doing is so incredible and so inspiring. So thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's really been a really good pleasure, and really nice to meet you and connect.
There you have it, ADHD as an allies. What an inspiring story. No parent should be blamed for wanting the very best for their child, whether it's in terms of their education or just simply their quality of life. We as parents all have a right to be taken seriously when it comes to any concerns we may have about our children. At the time of making this podcast episode, the Education Secretary had only just announced her plans to overhaul the SEND system. So I'll be talking more about whether the changes that she's announced go far enough and what exactly they are in my next blog article released on the 21st of November at adhdandme.org. Until then, keep up the good fight, ADHDers and allies, because real progressive change does not happen overnight or without any opposition.